A hug lasts an average of 3 seconds. And in those 3 seconds, a woman's nervous system generates a complete relational assessment of the person holding her. Not consciously, not deliberately, automatically. And certain things men do during those 3 seconds, things they often don't even realize they're doing, produce a neurological response that is the direct opposite of attraction. Not neutral, the opposite. The kind of response that quietly, permanently files someone into a category they never recover from. This video covers the specific hug mistakes that trigger that response, what they are, exactly why the female nervous system reacts to them the way it does, and what the research says about the difference between a hug that builds connection and one that quietly dismantles it. Here is something that should fundamentally change how anyone thinks about physical contact and attraction. The skin contains approximately 5 million sensory receptors. Of those, a specific category, called C-tactile afferents or CT fibers, responds exclusively to slow, gentle, warm touch and sends signals directly to the brain's social bonding and emotional processing centers. These fibers are not activated by all touch. They are activated specifically by the kind of touch that the nervous system has categorized as socially meaningful. And when they fire, they produce measurable neurochemical responses: oxytocin release, cortisol reduction, parasympathetic activation, that translate directly into the felt experience of warmth, safety, and connection. Professor Francis McGlone at Liverpool John Moores University, whose research on CT fiber function is foundational in the neuroscience of social touch, describes these fibers as the biological infrastructure of human bonding. They evolved specifically to make meaningful physical contact feel rewarding, and they are considerably more sensitive and more densely expressed in women than in men. What this means practically is that the female nervous system processes the quality of a hug with extraordinary sensitivity. Not just whether a hug happened, but how it happened. The pressure, the duration, the body tension of the person doing the hugging, the quality of presence they brought to it. Whether their hands communicated warmth or awkwardness, whether the hold felt genuine or performed. And when a hug contains specific qualities that the nervous system reads as disconnection, inattentiveness, or social awkwardness, the CT fibers don't fire the way they should, the oxytocin doesn't release, the parasympathetic response doesn't activate. And instead of the hug producing connection, it produces its neurological opposite, a subtle but persistent sense of unease that gets associated automatically and involuntarily with the person who delivered it. There are 6 specific mistakes that produce this response. And before I get to mistake number 1, I need to tell you that mistake number 4 is the one women find most difficult to explain when asked about it. They just know it felt wrong, but they can't always say why. By the time we cover the science behind it, the why will make complete sense. Let's start at the beginning. This first mistake deserves its own section because it is simultaneously the most common hug mistake and the one with the clearest neurological explanation for why it fails so completely. The back pat, arms around someone, hands rhythmically patting the upper back, is, in the research on hug typology, consistently identified as what researchers at the University of Dundee's psychology department have called a distance maintenance signal. It is warmth delivered with a simultaneous nonverbal announcement that the warmth has limits. The pat is a release valve. It is the hug's way of saying, I am here, but I am also already planning to leave. Here is what the pat communicates to the nervous system of the person receiving it. The rhythmic quality of the patting disrupts the sustained pressure that CT fibers need to activate the bonding response. CT fibers respond to slow, continuous warm touch, the quality of contact that communicates genuine presence. Rhythmic patting breaks that continuity into a series of brief contact moments that don't sustain long enough to trigger the neurological response associated with genuine connection. What the pat also communicates socially, and this is equally significant, is emotional distance. Research from the haptics laboratory at the University of Lille consistently found that back patting during hugs was rated by participants as significantly more distancing and less intimate than sustained back contact, It reads in the social language of touch as the physical equivalent of small talk, warm enough to be polite, distant enough to communicate that this is as close as we're getting. For a woman who is emotionally invested in the person hugging her, the back pat lands as a specific kind of disappointment. Not dramatic, not something she would necessarily articulate, but registered by the nervous system as this person is managing the hug rather than being in it. And managed physical contact, in the psychology of attraction, is the opposite of genuine presence. She will remember this, not consciously, but the nervous system files it. The second mistake is quieter than the back pat and considerably more damaging in terms of what it communicates about relational investment. Here is the dynamic that most men don't realize is happening during a hug. Both people's nervous systems are continuously running an assessment. Is this the moment to release or do I stay? The person who releases first is communicating through that action that their threshold for ending the physical contact was lower than the other person's. And in a context where attraction and connection are being built or not built, that difference in release thresholds carries meaning. Research on hug duration and emotional significance, including Dr. Karen Grewen's work at the University of North Carolina on oxytocin and physical contact, found that people who are more emotionally invested in a relationship consistently show higher release thresholds. They wait longer before initiating the end of a hug, which means the person who ends the hug first is, behaviorally, communicating lower emotional investment. Not intentionally, not consciously, but that is what the behavior registers as. When a man ends the hug before a woman is ready, when his arms release while she still has more hug left in her, her nervous system registers an interruption. The neurochemical response that was building from the sustained contact gets cut off before it reaches its natural completion. And the experience of that interruption, while small in duration, carries disproportionate relational weight. The experience she is left with is not quite being held the way she wanted to be held. And that experience, subtle, unexplained, felt rather than thought, contributes to a picture of someone who is physically present without being fully emotionally available, which is one of the most specific and most reliable attraction killers available. The correction here is not complicated. Wait, pay attention to her body rather than the clock. Let her be the one who initiates the release. The hug that ends when she is ready to end it is the hug that was fully given, and fully given is what the nervous system was looking for. The third mistake is perhaps the most physically obvious on this list, and yet it is one of the most consistently made because the person making it is almost always completely unaware that their body is doing it. When a person is emotionally guarded, self-conscious, or simply not fully present in a physical interaction, the body expresses this automatically. The muscles maintain a baseline tension that they would release if genuine comfort and presence were available. The spine stays slightly stiff. The arms maintain a controlled quality rather than settling. The chest doesn't fully relax into the contact. The breathing stays in the upper register rather than dropping into the slower, fuller pattern associated with genuine ease. All of this is completely invisible to the person doing it, and completely perceptible to the person being held. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's work on somatic markers, the body's system of storing and communicating emotional states, established that physical tension and physical ease communicate emotional states with a directness that verbal communication cannot match. When the body is tense, the nervous system of the person in contact with it reads that tension as a signal. This person is not fully here. This person is managing this interaction rather than being in it. For women whose CT fiber sensitivity and social processing activity make them particularly attuned to the quality of physical contact, a rigid hug body communicates something specific and unwelcome. This person is performing a hug rather than giving one. And the difference between a performed hug and a genuine one is felt immediately, filed immediately, and associated with the person immediately. The correction is not to force relaxation, which reads as performed relaxation and is equally detectable. It is to actually be present, to actually arrive in the moment of the hug rather than monitoring it from a slight mental distance. Genuine presence produces genuine physical ease automatically. The body relaxes when the mind is actually there. This fourth mistake is the one women find most difficult to explain. They know it happened. They know it felt wrong. They often can't say exactly why. Here is the neuroscience behind what they're detecting. Genuine presence during physical contact has a specific quality that the nervous system recognizes and responds to. When someone is fully attentive, when their awareness is genuinely in the moment of the physical contact, not half present while thinking about something else, this quality of attention produces measurable differences in breathing pattern, muscle tone, and the subtle micro-expressions that the face generates automatically. Research from Yuri Hasson's lab at Princeton on neural coupling, the phenomenon where the brain activity of two people in genuine connection begins to synchronize, found that this synchronization requires genuine mutual attentiveness. It cannot occur when one person's attention is divided or elsewhere, and the absence of neural coupling is experienced by the person whose brain was ready to synchronize as a specific kind of loneliness, not dramatic loneliness. The quiet, unexplained feeling of having reached for connection and found the other person not quite there. During a hug, wandering attention expresses itself in small but detectable ways. The arms that are present but not attending. The body that is in contact but not participating. The micro movements that communicate distraction rather than presence. A glance away. A fractional shift in attention that she will not consciously register but will feel. This is the mistake women struggle to articulate because it has no clear behavioral description. The hug happened, the arms were there, but something was missing. That something was genuine attentiveness, and its absence, detected automatically by the social processing systems of the female brain, produces a response that is the neurological opposite of connection. The fifth mistake requires understanding the body's social permission map. Different areas of the body carry different levels of relational permission. The upper back, between the shoulder blades, is accessible in a wide range of relationships. The lower back requires intimate level trust. The sides of the torso fall between these in terms of permission level. The mistake that kills attraction during a hug is not necessarily touching an inappropriate zone. It is touching a zone that is inconsistent with the actual relational level in either direction. Touching too high, hovering near the shoulders with arms barely committed, communicates social distance in a moment that is supposed to be warm. Touching too low, reaching for the lower back in a relationship that hasn't established that level of trust, communicates presumption rather than attunement. Both mismatches produce discomfort. And discomfort, even mild and unexplained discomfort, gets associated with the person who produced it. The nervous system does not analyze the source of the discomfort in real time. It simply records that being in physical contact with this person produced an uneasy sensation, and that record influences every subsequent interaction. The correction is genuine attunement, responding to the actual level of trust and connection in the relationship rather than making an assumption about it. The hands that communicate genuine warmth are the hands that are in the right place for where things actually are, not where you wish they were, where they are. This sixth and final mistake is the one that underlies all the others in a certain sense, because most of the specific mistakes described above are manifestations of this single underlying orientation. A hug treated as a transaction, something to initiate, complete, and move past, produces a fundamentally different physical experience than a hug treated as a moment of genuine connection. The transactional hug has a quality of efficiency to it. It happens quickly. It is executed rather than given. The arms go out, the contact occurs, the release happens, and the interaction moves forward. Research from the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami on the neurology of intentional versus incidental touch found that intentional touch, contact delivered with genuine attentiveness and genuine warmth, produce significantly higher oxytocin release, significantly lower cortisol levels, and significantly more positive relational associations than touch that occurred incidentally or transactionally. The neurochemical difference between a hug delivered as a genuine moment of connection and a hug delivered as a social obligation is measurable, significant, and felt by the person receiving it, even when they cannot articulate what they are feeling. The rushed hug tells the nervous system of the person receiving it. This interaction was not worth slowing down for. This moment did not merit genuine presence. You are someone I hug efficiently rather than someone I hug genuinely. And that message, however unintentionally delivered, is one of the most effective attraction killers available in ordinary social interaction. The correction is simply to actually be there, to treat the 3 seconds of a hug as 3 seconds worth inhabiting rather than 3 seconds worth completing. The hug that is genuinely given, unhurried, attentive, warm, and present is doing more relationship work than most conversations manage in 20 minutes. And the one that is rushed is undoing more than most men ever realize. Here is what connects all 6 of these mistakes at their root. Every single one of them is a version of the same underlying problem: physical presence without genuine attentiveness. The back pat manages distance while appearing warm. The premature release prioritizes the man's comfort over the woman's experience. The rigid body is physically there but emotionally guarded. The wandering attention is in the hug while being somewhere else. The mismatched hand placement presumes rather than attunes, and the rushed hug treats a moment of genuine potential connection as a social obligation to complete. All 6 are the body demonstrating that the mind did not fully arrive, and what the research on physical contact, CT fiber activation, and the neuroscience of bonding consistently shows is that what the female nervous system is looking for in a hug, what produces the genuine neurochemical response associated with warmth, attraction, and connection, is exactly what all 6 mistakes fail to provide: genuine presence, genuine attentiveness, genuine willingness to inhabit the moment rather than execute it. The hug that does this is not complicated to deliver. It does not require skill or technique in any elaborate sense. It requires the one thing that most people underestimate as a physical skill: actually being there, fully, unhurriedly, genuinely there. When that is present, the nervous system knows, and it responds accordingly. Before this video ends, what we just covered is about the physical mistakes that kill attraction. But there is a deeper layer underneath all of it that the research points to consistently. Because the 6 mistakes we covered are not really about hugging technique. They are about a fundamental gap in understanding how the female mind processes physical and emotional connection. And that gap, the gap between how men typically think about connection and how women neurologically experience it, is responsible for far more missed moments than just the hug. It shows up in conversation, inconsistency, in how emotional safety is built or not built over time, in how attraction develops or diminishes based on behavioral patterns most men don't realize they're creating. The video on your screen right now covers exactly that foundational gap, directly, specifically, and with the same research backing as everything we covered today. It is called Only Experienced Men Know This About the Female Mind. It covers 7 specific psychological insights about how the female mind actually processes connection, attraction, and trust. The things emotionally experienced men eventually figure out and that most men never learn until they've already paid the price for not knowing them. The hug mistakes make sense when you understand the female mind. That video gives you the understanding. Watch it now.